when Ben Affleck isn't busy starring in blockbusters or getting stuck in tabloid headlines, he frequently directs great movies. So today we're going to stop and rank all 5 Ben Affleck directed films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of all 5 Ben Affleck directed films. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I've done a bunch of these director rankings: Christopher Nolan, David Fincher, Steven Spielberg, M. Night Shyamalan, and so many more. If you enjoyed this video, you can find more like it in this playlist right up here when the video is over with. And let's get started. Coming in last place, Live by Night. Now, I watched this movie for the first time last night, and I think that put me at a certain advantage. The people that watched this movie when it first came out were watching Ben Affleck's follow-up to Best Picture winner, Argo. I, however, was watching Ben Affleck's worst film with a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. People that expected Argo were disappointed. I was expecting a terrible movie with a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I finished the movie and thought, well, that wasn't so bad. That was pretty decent. Now, granted, it is last on this list, but not because I think that it's a bad film. I just feel it's kind of familiar. Over the decades, a bunch of top-tier directors have tackled this time period, this subject matter, and these themes. And Ben Affleck is kind of a top-tier director, in which case I think it's a very competently made film where you can follow all the plot lines. The action sequences are thrilling and exciting, but he doesn't really bring anything new to the mix. It's handled professionally and competently, but without kind of that freshness to it. Along those same lines, it feels a little bit like he shot a 2.5-hour or 3-hour movie and then in the editing room shrunk it down to 2 hours and filled in all the gaps with voiceover, in which case it violates kind of the ultimate rule of film, which you're supposed to show, not tell. And this movie does do a good bit of telling instead of showing. But to be clear, I liked it, especially as I got into the second half of the film. First half was a little bit slow to kind of suck me in, but in the second half, when the plot really kicked in, I got invested in the characters, in the plot, and I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I think it clearly is Affleck's weakest film. I was holding in that sneeze for a long time trying to finish that. Number 4, The Town. And to be perfectly clear, this movie as well as the top 3, I feel these are all like top 10 of the year films. So even though this is number 4 on the list, I still think it's a great movie. It's a great heist movie with characters you actually care about. Our lead character wants out of this world, but he feels stuck in it. And he knows that his past will cost him the future that he wants.
If I think anything might happen to her, I'm gonna kill both of you.
I don't know if other people drew this comparison when the movie first came out, but for me, it reminded me a good bit of the John Woo Chow Yun-fat film, The Killer, which is about a hitman also who, through one of his missions, gets attached to a woman that he kind of falls in love with, and he knows his past will always be a burden between them, that barrier between them. And that's what you see in this movie as well. And because the movie makes you interested in the characters and their relationships to one another, every single choice matters because it has implications for the heist. It has implications for individuals. It has implications for their relationships. So as you go into it, the betrayals, the excessive violence, the mercy, the deceptions, you feel it. You care about it because you're invested in the characters. And that's what elevates this movie above other heist movies like it. There's a lot of heist movies, crime movies, and this one just does a great job of making you care. Therefore, when you go into the missions, when you move into the third act, you do have the big stakes of people's survival, but you also have the personal stakes of what does this mean for certain relationships. You care about all of it. That's when you have a great movie. Reason this one's number 4 as opposed to being higher up on the list, simply because the 3 higher on the list I felt did something to make them pop a little bit more and be more memorable in my mind. But all top 4 here, I think, are great. In third place, Gone Baby Gone, his directorial debut, which offers a morally complex story and a great what would you do film. As you go throughout the movie, you're invested in kind of the mystery of what happened to this girl in each of the characters and what's motivating them to do what they're doing. And as it starts to reveal what actually took place, it builds to a finale where there's no good answers. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just a question of what would you do? And our lead character does the legally right thing, but it makes you feel gross on the inside. And on the flip side, if he'd made the opposite choice, he would have done something illegal. And you wonder, would that have been a better choice? The movie offers several different answers as to what characters could or should do. Doesn't really cast judgment on any of them. It's an ending which is almost the definition of the opposite of a crowd pleaser. It's the opposite of a happy ending. It's one where it has a resolution that no matter what had happened, you would feel icky and gross, but you're supposed to. And it leaves you talking about it. After I rewatched it with my wife a couple weeks back, she said, I really didn't like that movie. I didn't like that at all. But not because it was bad, because it did exactly what it was supposed to do. She's like, yeah, he did the right thing, but you feel so gross because we had this whole long 30-minute discussion about the film. And even as she said that she didn't like it at all, she knew the reason she didn't like it is because it did its job and it challenged our simplistic morality of right and wrong and lives in the very nasty gray area. It's unsettling, where there's scenarios where there are no good answers. There are no happy endings. There's just complex choices that lead to different outcomes, and you don't know what the right choice is. And it's a story that does a great job of playing that out. Our runner-up, Argo. This movie was actually the Best Picture winner 10-ish years ago, and it's just a captivating telling of a bizarre story where real life was stranger than fiction, and they put together a fake movie to try and rescue people, and it's so insane that it makes it interesting from beginning to end.
You don't have a better bad idea than this?
This is the best bad idea we have, sir. By far.
And what the movie does so well is balance the real danger in everything taking place, where they have this insane plan that could fall apart at any moment, with the fun of the fact that it's an insane plan that could fall apart at any moment. And it just gets that perfect tone where it's right on this very thin line of constantly having you on the edge of your seat, constantly feeling how dangerous what they're doing is, but also acknowledging this is so silly, but it really happened. And it just does it just right, that it can have some laughs. It can put a smile on your face. You can spend the whole time being like, what? How did this really happen? While also being a great thriller that never breaks the tension, never starts winking at the camera. It just fully plays it out.
You really believe your little story is going to make a difference when there's a gun to our head?
I think my little story is the only thing between you and a gun to your head.
And the concept is just so inherently outrageous that it's interesting and it's fun. And it really happened. Like, this is a real thing that happened. And Affleck just kind of nails all of it, the tone, pulling it together. The performances are fantastic. And it's one of those movies that is great filmmaking, but also really entertaining. But coming in first place is Air. Ben Affleck's latest film is also his most lighthearted, and I would say it's my favorite and his best of the bunch. From beginning to end, it's compelling and funny. Somehow Affleck is able to tell a story about shoes and make it interesting. He's able to tell a story about people in offices scheduling meetings and make it a tense, edge-of-your-seat thriller. And even more impressively, he's able to tell a story about Nike and Michael Jordan and position them as underdogs. And you buy into all of it.
I can tell them the one thing the other companies can't compete with. Our basketball division is terrible.
I do not love it.
Affleck wisely uses the audience knowledge of future events to his advantage. In certain sequences, he intercuts in kind of these headlines, and then he also kind of frames things in such a way to borrow knowledge from the audience to infuse extra emotion into specific situations. And in doing so, he's able to kind of create this inspiring story that's about sports marketing. It's just fascinating what he's able to do here. And it's a sports movie with very little sports. It's a Michael Jordan movie with very little Michael Jordan. But it is this great movie that does something special without having to try and catch our attention by jangling keys in front of us with Michael Jordan doing Michael Jordan-y things or having a bunch of sports action sequences. It trusts the script and these characters to be strong enough to carry the film. He doesn't need to use any tricks because the script was that good. Other thing, as I mentioned before, it's really funny. And so much of that comes from the actors that were cast, in particular, like Jason Bateman and Chris Tucker. They can just find the humor in anything. All of these little scenes, they just add just enough in there and deliver lines in just a way to make it really funny without needing everything to be a big setup, payoff, forced joke. No, it just feels organic. We're only 3 months into the year, and I would say that this is the best movie of 2023 thus far. It'll almost certainly be in my top 10 of the year. It's just so entertaining. It's so uplifting. It's such a crowd pleaser.
You got a name for it? Air Jordan.
Maybe it'll grow on me.
We're only 3 months into the year, but this is currently my favorite film of the year. I'm sure it'll be in my top 10 by the time we get to the end of the year. And even though Ben Affleck has a bunch of great movies, this is my personal favorite, so it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this ranking, I've got a bunch of other director rankings. You can check them out in that playlist right over there. I've done the Tarantino films, Nolan, Spielberg, David Fincher, M. Night Shyamalan, and so many more. It's right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.